Welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, a weekly show helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. Today, episode 343, Commitment. And now, Experience of the Soul.
Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I am the host, and I'm here today with my happy producer.
I am happy.
I couldn't think of the word. I was going to say jovial, but then I was like, no, he always provides levity. And I thought, I can't say Levitical. That's a book of the Bible.
Wow, you went through a process there.
Like in like a millisecond.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
that's a lot that happened in your brain there.
Welcome
thank you.
To my world.
Thank you for that intro. I am very happy to be here as always. Welcome back, everybody, to Experience of the Soul podcast. We are happy that you are all joining us. Absolutely. This is episode 343. Today's Monday, January 13th. But you might be joining us at any time. So welcome whenever you're joining us. So excited to get into what we're talking about today. Of course, commitment, a huge part of, achieving any one of your goals. So we'll get into all of that. But as always, we want to do a couple of shout outs. Our first shout out today will be our social media shout out. That's going out to, and I might need your help with the pronunciation of this name. You might know this person, Jan Nord.
Jane Nord. Yes, I do.
Jane Nord. Okay, there you go.
Jane is like a prayer powerhouse, full of joy, full of love. And we knew each other back in Phoenix. You know, it feels like yesterday in some ways and like a million years ago in others, because, you know, my son was born in Phoenix and is now 17. So,
wow.
So I've known her at least 17 years. So closer to 20. So she was a dear soul. So thank you, Jane, for listening and for, I know you communicate via social media and are in touch there. And it means the world to me that we're still connected. So thank you.
Yes, Jane, it's great for us. Her recent comment was that, she loved something that we put out on social media and she was like, this is a must share, and she shared it. So those types of things, everybody, is a great way for you to support any small business, but to support us as well in the work that we're trying to do. So liking or loving or, commenting on the post and sharing them, engaging with them, all of that stuff really does make a difference for what we're trying to do. So we appreciate that, Jane. Yeah.
And Shawn, and if I could say one other thing for me, because so much of when I'm speaking live, I get feedback, right? And I'm used to that. Well, with the podcast and with social media, a lot of people are a little, they're looky-loos, but they're not participating. And so when you participate and when you give us feedback, even if the feedback is a private message, like, I love this, I'd love to see more, or you do like it, or you do love it, or you do comment, that gives us an indicator that what we're doing is supporting you. And if you don't comment, if you don't like, if you don't give us comments every now and then, we're going to assume we're not sure. So, so it helps direct us in the kinds of things. Obviously, it's all going to be spiritual content, but like if there's something big in your life that you could use support on, give us a little message. I'll be happy to put something out on it, or let us know if you like what we're doing. So it does really help us.
Absolutely. The moral of the story: don't be a looky-loo. Engage. I couldn't help to smile when you said that. I love that term, looky-loo.
Well, I was going to use a different term that has sometimes a different connotation, so I stayed away, but I guess looky-loo does too.
I like it.
Excellent.
Friends. So thanks for all that. So we are also shouting out to a location where we get some good downloads of the podcast. We're shouting out today to Columbia City, Indiana.
Whoa, Indiana, y'all have had some cold weather up there. Bless you on the journey. I'm happy to know that you're listening, and I do have several friends up in that area. So thank you for listening and for being a part of the show. And once again, feel free to, send us a text letting us know what you liked about the show, if there's any way we can support you further. But we just wanted to acknowledge you as part of the family here at Experience of the Soul. So thank you for listening.
Yes, absolutely. And with that, friends, let's get into our discussion on commitment. This is episode 343. of Experience of the Soul podcast.
So let's get into it. Yeah, let's get into it. So the new year is always a very special time because there's a lot of energy for moving forward. There's a lot of energy for making new plans, for kind of reassessing what our life is about, where we want to go. And last week we talked about new year, new you, and it was really about moving out of the idea of New Year's resolutions and moving into more spiritual intentions and working with our dreams, goals, and desires, in a very intentional way to be mindful of the direction we want to go, and to continue to look at, are there things we're doing? Are there things we are participating in that are not ours to do? And simply getting clear about who we are and what our purpose is. And, in so many private sessions, this is coming up lately, that people are saying to me, I just want my life to make a difference. I don't want to, work, pay taxes, and die. I want to be fulfilled. I want to live a spiritual life. I want to live a godly life. I want to know that my life has meaning. And so I wanted to continue forward on some of the ideas, because so many of you that listen, are weekly listeners. And I want you to know, after you start to get some clarity around your dreams, goals, desires, and intentions, you have to begin to commit. Like once you get the clarity piece, the next step is committing to that process. And so the name of the show today, I believe in one word, is commitment. Commitment. And we know that a commitment is a necessary ingredient of a dream, goal, or desire, of anything you want to manifest. It doesn't happen without a sense of commitment. And what is commitment? Well, it's really this dedication to a thing, to an idea, to a way of being. And so if you're not sure about next steps, then you want to hold back on the commitment, right? Because you don't want to just march forward not being right, not without clarity, because that could be wasted energy. This has been a really important one for me to learn. I'm learning it in my jujitsu practice. I'm learning it in my spiritual practice. I'm learning it relationally. If there's a lot of excess or lack of clarity, I need to slow down and get clear before I move forward. Right? So if you're still new to some of this dream, goals, and desire stuff, you might want to spend some time getting clear. Join one of my mastermind programs or reach out for a session. Although I only have like one space left, I think, for counseling right now. I want to help you get clarity so that you can commit to your soul's next steps. I wanted to speak about commitment to a large degree because it's something that in our culture doesn't get spoken about a lot. And I think part of that is because we can get what we want pretty easily, by a click of a button. And we have a lot of images flying at us a lot. We have a lot of different ideas and information we take in a day. And when we're so busy taking in, we forget to get quiet and still and think, okay, what is mine to do? And then committing to that. And so commitment is this dedication. It is also a belief in yourself and what your purpose is. So just think about that. Am I truly committed to these dreams, goals, and desires that I believe God is trying to bring forth in my life and in my world? Am I committed to that? Am I committed to that? So commitment is about clarity. It is about purpose. It is about dedicating yourself on a daily basis to what it is you say you want to do and be. And I'll give you an example of what it doesn't look like. And sometimes that helps, first of all, to think about it. So if you get clear about something, and then instead of following that clarity, you say, I'm going to read another book, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do another workshop. And your energy is everywhere. So even though you like the idea, even though you're called to the idea, if you don't have this focused attention or this, this commitment, this dedication to this idea, what's going to happen is all these other things are going to kind of chip away at the idea. And pretty soon you're going to forget the idea was even there. So I want to encourage you to get greater clarity, first of all, on who you are, what your purpose is, and then commit to being that, commit to that practice, commit to living that purpose in the world. What many of us do is we wish something would happen. And I'll give you an example. I've had people over the years come to me with financial issues, money issues. And, one of the first things I say is, tell me about your tithing practice. And they get totally silent. And they say, well, I'm not really ready to tithe, but I really am just hoping if I do these little prosperity affirmations that God's just going to bless me. And I said, well, God will bless you according to your level of acceptance. And the level of acceptance isn't high when you are withholding. In other words, when there is a lack of dedication to that practice of giving. I've seen this over and over and over again. I've helped people that make very little money. I've helped people that make millions with the same idea. And for every person that is willing to commit to this idea of giving, of being in alignment with spiritual principle in their finances, what happens is they feel in the flow, but they commit to it and they dedicate themselves to it. Many people that have asked me, and I ask them about their tithing, I ask them about their prayer life, and they're simply not committed to the work. And then I say, the good news is, if you're ready to dedicate yourself to living a spiritual life, if you're willing to dedicate yourself to giving to the place of your spiritual food, if you are guided to, give to those places that remind you of the truth of who you are, then you are committing those financial dollars, you're committing and saying, I believe in this. And the universe says, oh, yes, now I can answer back in kind. And so commitment really clarifies your energetic reality so that the universe can respond. Because we live in a cause and effect universe. And this means wherever my energy is, whatever I am drawing to myself, there is some piece that is drawing it. And so if I want to have financial prosperity, the thing for me to do is commit in my financial life to giving 10% to the place of my spiritual food. It is a gift. It is a blessing. And that commitment to it dedicates those dollars, but it also dedicates my energy, and it also brings me in alignment with spiritual principle. As I am in alignment with spiritual principle, I become clear about who I am and what my purpose is. So see, it is all tied together. This idea of committing to a practice, committing to yourself and your purpose, committing to time daily in the silence. I know I've heard from several people that after hearing a little bit of the shows on my book, I'll hold it up, I guess. After shows on my book, 7 Spiritual Laws of Release, several people said that chapter on the law of silence was so helpful because it helped them begin to dedicate just a little bit of time every day to silence. And what they're finding as they commit to it, as they dedicate themselves to it, that they are receiving the gifts of a peace of mind, of a little bit quicker joy and happiness. Yeah. Shawn, did you want to tap in and say something there?
I did actually, because I am one of those people, as we were going through the book, getting to that end chapter, and the way when you take the time for that silence, how it brings all of those pieces together. And when you go through each law in order, and you've done all of the things, and you've cleaned out the house, and you've, gone through the whole process, everything just seems to come like just just in line, just centers in
Yes.
in a way that really I have not experienced yet. I mean, and I've been, doing this kind of work for a long time and been with you for a long time as
Yes.
as a listener and as a supporter. But yeah, it was definitely hugely impactful for me to do that series on the podcast, that series on the book. And I highly recommend it to anyone. I mean, it doesn't have to be a, turn of the new year kind of thing. You could do this stuff at any time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it will make a difference in your life. I promise you. It will.
Exactly. but again, one of the reasons it did, Shawn, and it is because you didn't just do it once or twice, right?
Yes. Yeah. It continues. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a meditation, believe it or not, I've done for over 20 years. And I do it most every Saturday. I used to do it like the first year I did this one meditation. I did it every day for a year. And when I reached out to the author of the book and the meditation, we become acquaintances finally 20 years later. But my point in saying the 20 years is that there's one meditation where he talks about that. He says, imagine if you did this for the next 5 years or the next 10 years, where would you be? And it does move you forward. But again, he also talks about creating this place inside yourself that you get to come back to. And that's the piece, is that you're not reaching out here to like have somebody make you feel better, or have this person, have to have other people do it. You can do it yourself by being in peace, by going to God in silence.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things, and if this is a new concept or new idea for you, I would highly recommend also going back and listening to that episode on the law of silence. In that episode, we do 10 conscious deep breaths, where you can certainly feel like an energy shift just in the energy of the podcast and in yourself if you are doing it along with RCA in the episode. And then at the end of the episode, we ended with a full minute of just conscious silence. And I think that might be a really good introduction to this idea. This is new,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and we can put a link to that in the show notes too, right, Shawn?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And you said some important things, because I, always listen to the shows when they're out, because frankly, I enjoy them, and I love hearing some of the things Shawn says, and I always learn from him too, of course. And when we did those deep breaths, I was actually doing something in the kitchen when it came on, and I stopped and started breathing, and my eyes filled up with tears. Oh. And they did just now too. It was like I could feel the energy shift, and I could feel our connection. I was like, I just hope our listeners are feeling this, because it does come out of my years of committing to this practice,
Yeah. I remember at one time in some notes that I had back from like CCU when I would come to church and I remember one time you talked about doing 30 deep breaths, like having that be and I have done that, like to stay in it for a full 30 deep breaths.
Let me
you
say,
almost feel like high. I mean, you almost
exactly. You do. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, wait till you do 100. Oh, 100 is wild. 100 deep
I bet.
breaths.
I can't imagine. I've always stopped at 30 because that's what you said. No, I'm kidding.
It's my fault.
Yeah,
well, friends, and this is so interesting, because I love when sometimes we take a slightly left turn or a right turn, because it all comes back to commitment. But back in the day when LSD was used, so I want to talk about this. LSD was used therapeutically, and Shawn, that was probably 70s or late 60s, early 70s, with Tim O'Leary, Ram Dass. There are some of the names that are really known for those therapies. And I've done a lot of research on it. I watched movies about it. I've been fascinated at the use of psychedelics. And I do know that it can be, in a therapeutic setting, very, very healing. But what happened is, as it became a street drug, and it was abused, that, the government shut it down. But what happened is I think it was Stan Groff did this research and found out He traveled around the world, all over the world, indigenous cultures. And what he found is indigenous cultures, everyone had some technique for breathing, deep breathing, that got them into is called a non-ordinary state of consciousness. For people had very similar, if not the same, types of consciousness opening experiences. And we've had listeners to the show say they do psychedelics, and I honor you if that's your path. It's not my path, but I have experienced similar openings in consciousness through that deep breathing. And so I know it's possible because I've done it many, many, many times. Absolutely. But it was only through the commitment of it that I got there.
Exactly. I was just going to say that, but it does take commitment, because it took me a while to actually get to 30, because your mind naturally will start to wander and you forget what you're doing, and then you go back and I would go back and start at 1 again until I would get all the way to 30.
Yes. Well, and 30 is a great, like, if you've not done stuff like that, 30 seems like forever when you're doing really deep breaths. Like, you think, how long is this going to take?
Yes.
And so, like, when I started upping it, I had big speaking events, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in my head about this. I'm worried. I'm spinning around some of this stuff. So I am going to do 50. And that's when I started doing the 50. And 50 was like, one time that it was so deep, I was just lying in bed, no music, nothing. And I went so deep, and the light in me was so bright. I thought there was a light on me from the outside.
That's awesome.
I had to open my eyes, and it was like, no, kind of a one of those Orlando days, kind of rainy, but inside I was bright. Like the energy was phenomenal.
That's amazing.
And so 100 just times 2, it's just incredible. But how many years did I try to meditate before realizing the breath was the key to that? And some of it was through doing breath work. Some of it was through research. Some of it was through, having meditation teachers. Some was working with a voice teacher, but finally getting that it was the breath is the key. The breath is the key. And it was committing to that spiritual process. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I've never, to be like full transparency, never done psychedelics, so that's never been my thing either. And I know there's a different, when people are doing that for spiritual reasons, they're doing right. It's like, isn't it like small little amounts? They're not. Right?
I would say there's all different. Different.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and like a lot of people have done ayahuasca and mushrooms. Those are all. Okay. Well, ayahuasca is like, tribes in the Amazon did ayahuasca, once a year to get a vision for their people. And now we're doing ayahuasca on the weekends. It's so without some kind of measurements, if you tend to be an addictive personality. So I've spoken about it before, and I was happy to get some feedback because somebody said it sounded judgy. And I was glad for the feedback because the reason I speak about it, like, please be careful, is look at what we already do with alcohol and drugs as a culture with marijuana, and if you are an addictive behavior and you start to do psychedelics and you do them too much, that your consciousness doesn't close down. But there are people that use it spiritually, absolutely. Yeah. And the so
thing is, we don't really need it. Like, if you would just, well, yes. I shouldn't actually say that, because everyone, to each their own. But there are ways to get there. There are ways to get there.
Well, and like I say, I mean, I worked with people who medicine shaman, some may call medicine men, use types of, like, peyote is really considered a psychedelic, right? Would use that to help trauma. And a lot of veterans, people with really extensive trauma, have really gotten a lot of peace. So, I mean, there is a lot of good. And I've talked to a lot of therapists about it. and I know a therapist well who uses it in her practice, but her big caveat is please, please, please be very careful, because of us as humans and our addictive nature. So, I wanted to bring it back up. I mentioned it in a talk again the other day. And, I've really worked a long time with it to not be judgy about it because, of how negatively drugs have impacted my family. But there are people who use psychedelics for a spiritual experience. So,
Yeah, I guess, and as long as it does come down to commitment, as long as your commitment is to a positive,
yes.
meaningful outcome and not just to get, blitzed out of your mind, then,
and then go operate a car and put other people at danger. I mean, that's just the thing. Anytime, it's why I don't really, I'm not a big drinker. I don't do any drug at all. I personally do not want to be out of awareness of how my actions might be impacting others. So that's
really good. Yeah.
It's really that simple for me. It's not that I think having a couple beers is evil, or so it's not that. It's that I just know what I want for my life, and I know what I want for my son to grow up with. Somebody who always has their faculties.
That's
that
present.
No matter that's present, no matter what time it is, day or night. And so, it's just the fundamental. It's just the fundamental principle of my life. And, I got there through my own childhood, I'm sure, experiences. And so my commitment is to spiritual growth and personal growth. And so it's like on this issue, I've done a lot of work because I've tried to understand it. And I know how certain practices can bring people hope and still be not for me at all, so it's been a real learning. But I think getting clear about what your purpose is, what you are to be doing, is so important. So important. And again, we don't want to be wishing something would happen. As my good a guy I worked with many years ago, Richard Rogers, said, "You know what? A wish is just a dream without commitment."
Wait, the composer? No,
a different Richard Rogers. Not of Rogers.
Okay.
Not Rogers and Hammerstein.
Oh, okay.
Reverend Richard Rogers.
Oh. Okay.
Said, although that sounds like a song from a musical.
Well, it's a dream is a wish your heart makes is what it was. What it made me think of. That's a Disney tune. But,
that's a Disney.
But yeah, I love that. I'm actually looking at that here in the show notes. So a wish is simply a dream without commitment.
Yes. And so when we commit, it means I'm committing to myself. It means I'm believing in myself. I'm believing in God, in and through me. I'm believing that I am worthy to receive this vision. To commit means I dedicate myself to a certain way of being in the world. And, I as I look on our world today and I see so much, not just negativity, I'll call it vile, anger on the internet. We seem to have no inner values or guide. We seem to have no commitment other than to our own opinion. And I think that is very, very dangerous. So for me, this idea of commitment, it simply relates to all the other spiritual principles we work with. And it helps keep me accountable to myself and to my own spiritual nature. And so I love and support you enough as our listener to know you're being guided. You're doing that on your own and in whatever way you see fit. So I just trust that you're going to know what yours to do, when and how to do it. And it's going to take your commitment to really move it forward. No matter what it is you're doing, no matter where it is you want to go, without commitment, you're not going to be able to move it forward. I'll give you one more example before we end today. So I've been working on one of my books I've been working on it's probably a little over 3 years now. And when I realized it had been 3 years, I couldn't believe it because, I'll write several stories and then I'll put it down. And then I'll write several stories and then I'll put it down for 3 months. One time I put it down for almost a year. And now I've been writing very, very frequently for the last year. And I just did a word count just to see how far along I was. And I had, 37,000 words. And I thought,
wow, that's amazing.
I thought, how did I get to 37,000 words? And you know what?
Dang.
It's from committing to that process.
100%.
That's the only way that happens, friends. That's the only way it happens. So much I learned from my jujitsu. I just had a lesson, and my coach said, "Wow, you're really improving." And it is because of your commitment. Yeah. It's like, and by the way, just so you know, you're in, what did he say? You're in the top 15% of all students who come here.
Wow.
And I said, well, what does that mean? I said, oh, really? I said, I don't know. I always feel like I know nothing. I said, I don't know. And he said, well, it's your commitment level. It's your commitment level. See how your belt keeps going up? And see, there's people who've been here a lot longer than you, and their belt isn't going up because they don't put in the time. And if they don't put in the time, they don't have the skill. And if they don't have the skill, they don't get the next belt. He said, it's your commitment that sets you apart. And my mom really modeled that for me. I have to say, I could not have had a better model of someone who committed to their physical journey the way she did, and so.
She was a runner, right? She
was a runner. She did a triathlon as well. She did a triathlon at 75.
Wow.
I think it was like a mini triathlon. It wasn't the full length. She ran the New York Marathon at 70. Yep. And she ran her last half marathon at 80. And she also did yoga every day as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. She just learned it watching a little, TV about this big. And if I figured out how to get a mat and healed herself of arthritis by learning to cook different. I mean, just, but her commitment was, well, if this is what you do, I'm going to try it for a long time. And even towards the end of her life, this is before, in the last little bit, she did a break her hip. And then that was kind of a key to her passing and leaving this life. But she was in such good shape, at 85. I needed to help her in the shower. And she just went into a pose in yoga and held her foot up halfway in the air so I could just wash her foot.
Wow.
It was like, I don't know if I could do that. It was like a tree pose. It was like a tree pose in yoga. Yeah. Here you go. And she sticks her foot out. She's standing upright, just like this. And I go, my God, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. And to have that kind of balance.
Yeah. Have that kind of balance.
Yeah.
One day I showed up at the senior center where she ended up living the last couple of years, and I walk in and she's pushing somebody. She goes, "I'm taking this old lady to class," and she's pushing the wheelchair of somebody, about her age.
Oh wow!
Like she thought she worked there, So, but my point is, her commitment to her physical body helped her on until she passed. And so it was only about the last couple of months where she was not totally and completely able to get around, and most people, 10 and 15 years younger were sitting there with a remote or doing nothing at all. But it was her commitment that made the difference, because it sustained her, up until she was over 90 years old.
Incredible.
Yeah. So
That's
it's like
a glimpse into your future right there.
Praise God. I hope
you'll be doing jujitsu at 85 years old.
Somebody in a home will try to help me and I'll take them down.
We're like, whoa.
Put them in a headlock. Yeah. Well, friends, I hope you're having fun with this with us. And
I've never stuck around this long. I've never been in an episode.
Shawn,
I didn't mean to. I was just coming in and
I know sometimes Dave would say, okay, was that a therapy session? I'm sorry. And I go, no, it's great, because people learn from your experience too, and your input and your questions. And it's great. And I learned from you as well. So friends, our hope for you, the reason we, even spent a little extra time in this today, is we just want you to feel supported. We want you to have the tools. It's like commitment is a tool in the toolbox, and it is a necessary tool. You can't just have a divine idea and no commitment. You can't just have a wish and for financial freedom and expect money to fall from the skies. You've got to commit yourself to the processes associated with that dream, goal, and desire, or it will not come forward for you. And our hope for you is success, it's goodness, it's peace, it's hope, it's love, it's passion, even compassion, all good. So we thank you for joining us. Again, I want to thank our listeners in Columbia City, Indiana, and Jane Nord. Bless you, my dear, from Phoenix. Sending love your way. And dear friends, as always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your financial support. We look forward to seeing you next week, and blessings on the journey.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. This podcast is made possible because of listeners and viewers just like you. If you would like to support the podcast with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head on over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Experience of the Soul podcast is copyright 2025 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved, and is produced by Shawn Kilgore. A production of the Soul Works Group, Incorporated.